will get into this. So we are here for some mid-season collegiate power rankings. We are through 6 rounds? 6 rounds of Swiss in ABC. We're 5 of 7 weeks into NACE regular season. Looks like we're heading into week 4 of 7 for NECC. So we are really at a pretty good midpoint for the regular seasons, at least. I suppose we're not truly in the middle of the season because most of the teams we talk about are teams that have playoff beliefs, aspirations, etc. But what we've got pulled up here is my current power rankings, and we'll get into some interesting things that happened. Hey, Blah. So I'll first do a brief breakdown of things that have happened that I suppose are relevant since the last one. DreamHack Collegiate Atlanta happened. We had 7 teams in that. Converse had to back out due to hurricane stuff. Sucks to be them, unfortunately. And looking at this, we of course had Winthrop win this. Winthrop winning this was an inevitability that really, especially after Converse pulled out, was almost certainly going to happen. But what we did get here that was a little bit more interesting is Blinn beat Georgia Tech, which is fine. Georgia Tech was a top 20 team at the time. They're not currently going to be in, I suspect, anyone's top 20. And then we're also going to see that we had Missouri prove that, hey, no, they were the king of this group, but University of Texas Dallas is better than expected. They don't have Derpy anymore. They're not playing pedal anymore, but they're clearly hungry. They're clearly finding a way to make stuff work with some of the players over there, Puggo, Phone, etc. They're better than people were giving them credit for. We also had a banger of a match between Missouri and Blinn. This was actually a 3-1, if memory serves. I think there was a draw in there. So Missouri won it at LAN, which, hey, props. Winning at LAN is hard. LAN can be a little different than online play because people have, travel things where maybe they don't get enough sleep, and then hotels and they didn't sleep in their own bed, and then, the food, and did they get food poisoning or the water, whatever, etc. But, LAN is in old school esports what you consider the most important results here. So Missouri did beat Blinn in a nail biter there, and that was really the finals because the actual finals, Winthrop versus Missouri, we didn't care about. We have some of the most recent things in NECC here. We see, a lot of these have had reschedules. Some of the things that have happened are Fisher Navy fell to Terps Esports. This is interesting because in the past, Fisher 2, which is what Fisher Navy is this time, Fisher 2 would generally still be a top 20 team. In fact, it would generally be somewhere in like the 12 to 16 range, something like that, maybe a little bit lower, and that's really not going to be true anymore if they're losing to Maryland. Now, Maryland does seem to be a bit better than before, but this is not some fluke, or it probably isn't some fluke because Maryland also has a win over Fisher's third team, and Fisher's third team is usually in that like 20 to 30-ish range, etc. So Terps have figured something out. They've got something going on. Fisher has fallen off, some combination of the two. That's probably the most interesting thing that happened in this bracket. I do see New York and ABC is not have a great record. There's something like 3-3, 4-2, something like that. It's not great, so maybe they didn't belong in this division this time, unfortunately. They had some good wins last season, or had some good almost wins last season against top teams, but they may be a little bit out of their depth here, and we do even see that it looks like they have a forfeit to Missouri here. I don't know if that's because Missouri has a reschedule policy, which are scams, by the way. Reschedule policies are scams. They're things that colleges hand out to go, this is why we can't reschedule, blah, 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 blah. You could reschedule if you wanted to. And sometimes there's sponsorship money involved with like, oh, well, we have, a broadcast schedule with our sponsorships that we're going to broadcast it now and we can't move stuff because we have a professional broadcast team and we've told our sponsors that this is what's going to happen and all of our games are going to be streamed. And I can give a little bit of leeway for that, but for the most part, reschedule policies are a scam. See St. Clair, see Missouri, whatever. I don't like seeing more teams adopt them. I would be okay with if the scene decided, hey, we're going to be like real sports and overall we're not going to reschedule. I suppose I could get behind that, but that's not where the scene is right now. And being some of the teams to take the first step in that direction, just like when Ball did it, just like when then Boise did it, we can go back. Not the coolest thing to do in the world. Where's phase two? Not in Collegiate. Okay, then the other side of NECC, this is, of course, the other interesting match that happened. Since last rankings, Northeastern beat Converse, which was great, but from there it was downhill. Northeastern had a terrible, terrible weekend, and they lost to ISU Redbirds Academy 3-2. That was a terrible performance from us. Not to take too much away from ISU Redbirds Academy, I'm going to take some away from them because that wasn't the Northeastern that beat Converse is not the same Northeastern that lost to ISU Redbirds Academy. It's just not. So that's not transitive. But ISU Redbirds Academy, they maybe have actually figured out their DPS line. We actually played ISU Redbirds Academy, not this weekend that just ended, but the previous weekend in ABC. We 2-0'd them effortlessly, quite frankly. And then they came back with a different DPS player, a lot of hunger, which I actually sort of expected that they would have, and we just played awfully. But they won that, and then Northeastern also dropped to Utah and ABC, which is definitely an upset as well, but good on Utah. So we go over to our power rankings here. NACE, is there anything in particular that I want to cover here? I just covered both sides here. I don't think I have anything too interesting. Oh yeah, one more interesting thing in this side of NECC. UC Irvine has signed up for Master Division or is qualified. They took a spot from another team for Master Division and Face It, which will give a little bit more collegiate, non-collegiate overlap, which we'd gotten a little bit light on since Maryville used to be a top team in non-collegiate esports as well as collegiate esports, but Maryville isn't competing in non-collegiate this season. Some of their players are on different teams, like Kings over there, etc. But we have an actual collegiate team and a reasonably high-tier team, not as good as Maryville, competing over in the non-collegiate scene, which is good for collegiate visibility and helping teams establish where collegiate teams versus non-collegiate teams sit for scrims as well as for, fan bucks, etc. Sort of thing. Okay. So I think that covers it. We take a quick look at NACE. NACE isn't too crazy at this point. The big upsets aren't really, nothing crazy in terms of upsets has really happened in NACE. NACE is one of the places where we further established the true top tier versus the fake top tier. And part of that is you're going to see Maryville is 3-2 in NACE and their losses are to the top two teams. And Northwood also got 3-0'd by ISU, I want to say, or maybe it was Winthrop, maybe it was, I don't know. These teams, these two teams are clearly better. ISU did beat Winthrop in their early head-to-head in NACE, so that definitely matters, and we've got ISU on top. But Winthrop clearly is focused more on playing as the Shock right now, which isn't going too well for them either. They had a whoopsie defeat. They've lost to Fluffy Amers twice now, and people would have previously considered those two different tiers of teams. Hasn't been great for them lately, but there's a lot of roster overlap between Winthrop and Shock, and it's very clear that Winthrop belongs in this tier with ISU, even if ISU is the better team right now. I expect Winthrop will practice more either as this semester goes on and we get to finals, so basically in another week or two, in another couple weeks, like 3 weeks from now, they should be practicing hard as Winthrop, but we'll see. Or at the collegiate in the spring, for the second semester, maybe they consider that the more real one. I think the prize money is slightly better for that one, etc. We'll see. Northwood and Maryville, in the previous world, we've usually had 4 or 5 teams in this top tier. This semester has just shown that these two don't really belong in the same tier right now. Maybe they'll train up for the end of the season. Maybe they'll care. They have the players that look like they should belong there. But obviously, ISU was the quadruple crown champion last time. No one else got anything from them. Winthrop should have been the threat, but then had the roster mania where they didn't have a DPS player. Winthrop is back to playing Sam, by the way, who is, some people would consider persona non grata. Wait, did he do a redemption arc, etc.? They are playing him as their DPS. They do have a real DPS line again. They have real everything positioned again. This team belongs in this tier. These two teams have not shown that they can keep up. Maryville just doesn't seem as dialed in. I suspect most of their players just don't care as much as they did last semester. And now that there's sort of been a year to see what the Overwatch League world looks like, how much money is in it, I suspect you're seeing this team is down to fewer players than starting positions that are really dialed in and super focused caring. And I think Northwood is honestly in a bit of a similar boat right now. Maybe that changes. Maybe, competitive drive, the blood heats up, that gets better. Speaking of Northwood here, we can look at Rutgers. Rutgers in ABC Swiss had a crazy close match. Northwood tried to push all the way through on Clash, for those of you that don't know, tried to take the last point. And they didn't have some huge lead when they were doing it. The game had been back and forth. The match had been back and forth. Clash was game 3 of a best of 3. And, they overulted, didn't get the cap. And then Rutgers was this close to winning the whole match off Northwood playing Clash wrong. Something that, Clash is the newest game type, but players of Northwood's caliber should have down. And, Rutgers was still in the match even before that. They just almost handed it to Rutgers on a silver platter there. So Rutgers is not going to be doing that to these two teams. So that's part of my further justification for these two need their own tier now. And, you could consider it with some of previous tier labels I've used. That might just be upper core. And maybe these teams are going to find their way into the upper core. They've got good arguments. Okay, so then we move on. You suggest much better names. You did suggest much better names. Hedwig wanted me to call everything frauds, and I could have. There was very much a world where I went real Overwatch, or fraud champion tier, maybe not frauds, circle of frauds, and then fraud watch. And there's pretty good justifications for all of those, and you'll see why. I mean, these guys are sort of fraud champion tier because they're just not keeping up with these top two. They don't belong in the same tier anymore. These guys actually haven't done anything wrong and are mostly above reproach. ASU, like Northeastern, performed poorly over the summer in Face It. ASU sort of redeemed that by going and as ASU getting, or maybe the order's wrong, but in stage 3 of OWCS, going and making top 16, even top 12 in OWCS. Group stages, they got third in their group, so that would put them top 12. So, okay, that's solid. That's a fine showing for a collegiate team of their caliber. Their Face It playoff run was not acceptable. Similar with the regular season, similar with Northeastern season before they dropped out in Face It, whatever. So, maybe that would be a reason for a fraud question mark here. Irvine is completely untested at this point, but they are now in Master Division, like I said. They kind of got to Master Division. It was a temporary, I'm blanking on the team's name. Then O3 Splash grabbed them. Then they transitioned to UC Irvine. I'm not actually sure they had 3 players for that changeover, but maybe. Maybe. Anyway, we'll see what UC Irvine does. It looks like they are still playing Rhino over Romani, which, hey, that makes sense. Rhino's a great tank. On the other hand, when they've tried that before, Romani has done things like form a second team and go beat them. So, we'll see if that works out for them, if that's the right approach, if Romani's going to get some more playtime. Who knows? We move on to Rutgers, talked about them. They don't have any super meaningful wins yet, but they were so close on Northwood that I'm going to put them up here. And this is, the tier that they would have been in last semester, so they continue to stay here. ASU, similar stuff. Haven't seen any crazy wins from them, but they finished last semester strong. They are in good shape. They had the stage 3 OWCS finish. Fisher is down. This is Fisher's main team. Fisher's main team used to be team number 5, and remember, it used to be 4-5 all sort of in the same tier, with maybe 5 belonging as a half tier between the two tiers. Fisher's down. Their roster just doesn't look as good as it used to. That's reality. They haven't taken some terrible loss yet, but that's what this is. Fisher is here because that roster is just not the same caliber that they've fielded in the past compared to the rest of the scene. They now just look like sort of any other team in this tier. That's sort of what opened up the spot in a top 5 there. Bryant Stratton, they made roster upgrades. Their roster looks good. They have one question mark spot, but again, haven't taken any bad losses yet. They do have a loss in ABC, but I'm pretty sure it's to Maryville. I'll confirm that real quick. Easily done. We're looking at Fisher. Fisher doesn't have any losses yet. If we're looking at UCI, their only losses to Winthrop. They've beat Fisher White, Briarcliff, and Converse. So, Irvine has done their job. ASU's only losses to ISU. Can't complain about that. Not that they have any wins better than Washington, but Washington did make playoffs last season. And then we look through to I was grabbing Bryant Stratton. Bryant Stratton has losses to Maryville and then a nail biter 3-2 loss to Fisher. So right here, right next to Fisher, that seems appropriate. They have wins over. They have a win over Blinn, who is currently over here, and Siena Heights, who is down here. So this seems pretty justifiable. I don't think I'm going to see a lot of objection on this. You were so close, but no cigar. You were Ajax. Ajax is on Rutgers, for those of you that don't know. You guys had that there. Northwood opened a huge chink in the armor. Not that you guys weren't making your own chinks in their armor, but they made a huge flub by trying to full cap on you guys, and that they then managed to still hold on to that on that final middle point without them having ults was just like so painful to watch. So painful to watch. I think Pigboy was streaming it. I would have loved to see you guys up here. I would have loved to. I probably couldn't have actually moved you guys all the way up there, but you for sure would have been up in this tier. Maybe you would have been here. Who knows? It would have been great to see. Shroom Squad 03 Splash UCI. Yes, that was it. And there were definitely two players that were on Shroom Squad for the 03 Splash transition, and then we're always on UCI. I'm not so sure about the third, but hey. Okay. Almost won the last fight twice. I know, man. I know. It was so close. I was pulling for you. Okay, so we are through what I'm now calling the core collegiate tier. In the past, this would have been upper core, but we've split our champion and fell off fake champion tier, whatever. And I could very realistically see these teams ending up in this tier. I could very realistically seeing this. I'm not convinced there's much gap between these teams. The gap between Northwood and Rutgers right now is certainly smaller than the gap between Northwood and ISU. So, I could have even, I could very well merge these into one tier. We're going to have to see what happens. It's going to be a question of can Maryville and Northwood turn it on. Then we move into the circle of trades or circle of frauds or whatever you want to call it. And the truth is, Bellevue is above the circle of trades. I'm not willing to put them up in this tier. Part of why I'm not willing to do that is Miami played too close a game against them last weekend. It was a 2-1 that then came down to Gibraltar. Oh, that feels a little too much like our 3-2 that came down to Gibraltar. And Bellevue got the win, but that did not look as comfortable as it should have. And that could be evidence that Bellevue or that Miami, Ohio is better than we think, and that's why you're now seeing Miami, Ohio here in my 20th slot. That's why you're seeing it, because it could be evidence that Miami, even though Miami doesn't have any great wins right now, there's flaws with everyone down here. So that maybe is inappropriately dragging Bellevue down. Maybe Bellevue belongs up here, but that is why I've got them here. Miami, Ohio hasn't given any evidence anywhere else that they should be able to take a team maps, and then have a very close match in general against a team that, for Bellevue's results, they have losses to Winthrop and ISU. You can't hold that against them at all. They've got wins over UTD, not super relevant. They've got a win 3-1 over Blinn. That's going to be more relevant. They've got a 3-2 over Converse. That's going to be more relevant. So they have multiple wins in this tier, no losses in this tier, and their only losses are up here. But that chink in the armor here, maybe I'm inappropriately holding them back. Regardless, all it would do is move them up to this tier. It certainly couldn't really move them ahead of like Fisher, who actually has the win over Bryant Stratton here. So that's sort of what I'm looking at, how I'm calculating this. But maybe it's wrong. Maybe Miami, Ohio is better than we think, and then Bellevue is perfectly acceptable to have dropped a map to them and had that match be close. We shall see. Who? What if who super chatted? We were watching and went through all 5 stages of grief with y'all. Yes, we were. We were very much watching that Rutgers match. What would it take for you? Oh, what if he super chatted? What if who super chatted? Oh, for me to. Oh, you're saying if Ajax super chatted, would I merge the tiers? The tears, not the tears of the loss, like oh I'm crying, but the tears here between fell off and core collegiate. I could. Okay. Then we move on to Illinois Esports. Illinois Esports is a tough one for me. And I don't think it's about to get easier. So Illinois Esports hasn't yet. This is Illinois Orange, Illinois Urbana Champaign, whatever you want to call it. They are a known team in that they've been in this tier for two and a half years, 2 years, something like that. And we like them. That is Chopper's collegiate team. It's also got Zoolander, who is a player who jumps between, I don't know, Masters, Mid-Master. And when I say Masters, I'm talking Face It Masters, which is the top division. So mid to upper mid, Masters division in Face It, to very top of Expert in Face It. You know, jumps around some. Maybe that's too high. Maybe it's high expert to mid expert, or no, that, yeah. Mid Masters to top of expert is where that player jumps around, and then Chopper, who players probably know. DPS has historically paired with Rocket for Tracer Genji shenanigans, has some okay hit scans, etc. as well. Okay is underselling it, but we look at that, and that's that player's collegiate team. They've been in this scene forever. The problem is they took a forfeit loss. They didn't actually lose. They took a forfeit loss to Drexel, I want to say. Drexel can't beat them. I mean, if Drexel beat Illinois, or maybe it wasn't even a forfeit loss, maybe they lost, but they lost with like 2 players out or something. It's something that I don't care about. I look at that and I don't hold that loss against them, except for the fact that in playoffs last season, they lost a nail biter to UTD because they had 2 players out and had to put Zoolander on tank and then like a DPS to play support to replace him on support or something like that. So it's, like, oh, wait, maybe that's happened twice now. But the real issue is the entirety of last season, the only meaningful matches Illinois had, besides that one match that they had, crazy sub situation for, was they played and lost to Rutgers 3 times. I can't do anything with that. Like, they've spent the entirety of last season across multiple things, like ABC Swiss, ABC Group Stage, and then even Big Ten Conference. They played Rutgers and lost to them 3 times. They won every other match that they were supposed to, but they didn't get matches against these teams that I could look at and rate them at, and we're quickly running on a similar course this semester, so it's been like 8 months since we've seen a real Illinois match against someone that isn't Rutgers, against, a core collegiate, upper core, lower core, whatever team that isn't just like a, okay, yeah, you got smacked down by ISU sort of thing, or yeah, okay, you walked over Terps sort of thing. Like, so we really would love some more information on them. So they're sort of floating here unproven, and with a longer history of being unproven than most of the teams in here. They beat Bellevue? Where? Oh, well, they beat Bellevue when that Bellevue was collapsed. Bellevue wasn't real at the end of last, like, yes, good on them for beating Bellevue. Last semester's Bellevue was not looking like this semester's Bellevue. This semester's Bellevue, other than the what's going on with against Miami there, this semester's Bellevue hasn't lost to any of these teams. Last semester's Bellevue lost to Illinois Orange, sure, but also lost to like Utah or a Georgia Tech or a UW. They lost to something down here. They had losses to Blinn, they had losses to Northeastern, like not the same thing, or maybe they didn't lose to Blinn. But regardless, That Bellevue had already given up. They knew they were in a death group. We had some weird groups last semester. Okay, so then we move on past Illinois Orange, who was sort of, and this is why I could call, this is a weird tier. It's all a little bit weird right here. St. Clair. What is St. Clair doing up here after taking a 3-2 loss? I believe it was a 3-2 loss to Blinn. And why is Blinn down here if Blinn just beat St. Clair? Ah, you were about to learn the meaning of the circle of trades. Circle of frauds, whatever we want to go with here. So we look at this tier, and Bellevue, clean. Bellevue has 3-2 win over Converse, 3-1 over Blinn, and that's fine. Illinois, not involved in this, just hasn't proven themselves in ages. So we go on to St. Clair, and St. Clair has a 3-1 win over Converse. Okay, we can work with that. 3-1 win over Converse. Converse might have had a little bit of an up and down, but 3-1 win over Converse, that's something. Makes sense to me. And then they've got a 2-3 loss to Blinn. So we'll put Blinn over here. Why not? Okay, cool. I'm with it so far. So far this just looks wrong, and why have I put stuff in this order? Well, maybe we'll get to the confusion that is Converse, because Converse is going to make stuff difficult, and Converse has... Oh, we'll go with blue still for wins. Converse is going to have themselves a nice little 2-0 win over Mizzou. So now it makes sense that I have, these three sort of in this order, but Blinn will just be on top of them, right? But we'll keep going because Converse is more complicated than this. Converse, of course, also has a loss to Northeastern. Converse, of course, also has a loss to Bellevue, which, hey, I suppose I can draw that over here while we're at it. And then Converse has a loss to, let me look at that. Converse has themselves a loss. Oh, I have to draw those in the other direction. My bad. Converse has a loss to that, and Converse has a loss to Blinn. Well, that gets complicated. Because now we're in a situation, and of course, we already went over this at the very beginning. It was a close match between these two, but we did have the win go in the direction of Missouri over Blinn. What do you do with this? Now, some of this could be Converse up and downs, creating confusion, like maybe Converse had a down, then found a new comp, or Converse, had to dealt with hurricane stuff and then got better, whatever. Maybe some of that's going on, but even without Converse here definitely makes this messy, but even without Converse here, you still have Blinn beat St. Clair but lost to Missouri, Converse beat Missouri, and Missouri beat Blinn, and then you have the additional okay, St. Clair beat Converse, and well, maybe the move is just to move Converse to the back here, but Converse in the past would have been up here in this tier, so we're already dropping them pretty far, and how much do we want to drop off of one loss is always a question mark. Yes, you take a hit, you absolutely take a hit for a loss, but do we want to move a team from here down to over here? Maybe that could be correct. That could be appropriate, but this is where we're at. What tends to happen is teams slide in both directions when those things happen, and beating a team once when you're pretty far from them, at least in the previous rankings, doesn't necessarily swap you right to ahead of them in one move. It generally is sort of like you get credit for your second win sort of thing. But hey, that's what we are looking at, so let's go here. Circle of Trades, the short bus tier. There you go. Converse has a loss to Nike. But where does Under Armour factor in? And Adidas? No, I'm kidding. Okay. So this tier's a mess. This tier is a circle of trades, etc. I could definitely take some pushback that St. Clair should be lower in here. Maybe that Converse should be lower in here, but that's tough to argue now. Maybe Converse previously could have been a lower in here, but now they're stabilized. Hard to really know. And St. Clair, off a single loss, going to go from, pretty solid in the core tier to low in the circle of trades. I don't know about that. Then I don't really need to. I've effectively covered this circle already. Lastly, we have St. Thomas. St. Thomas messed up at the end of last season. St. Thomas did not put it together. St. Thomas did not put it together at the end of last season and did not make it through. They might not have even gone third. They might have gone fourth in the group. I don't really care. Regardless, they didn't make playoffs, and now they don't yet have any meaningful wins, but their only loss is to a top four team. So we don't really care. They're back here. They've added one new player since last season. Should be a reasonable quality player. They've been in this tier before. They're going to sit here. Part of why they're sitting here is because I wanted to put more teams before I got to Northeastern, because Northeastern played like doo-doo last weekend. They did. But I can't really put them. Oh, I can't really put Northeastern any lower than I did. Like, I tried, guys. I legit tried to go, okay, well, that was terrible. Northeastern lost two terrible matches, so I can surely go put them lower. I I just can't. Sorry. Like, and not some like, oh well, favoritism, it, stops me from doing this. Like, no, I know I know how we play against these other teams, etc. And hey, the truth is, I expect what's going to happen, especially because this next patch doesn't shift the meta, is Northeastern is going to, this weekend, find a couple good matches, one or two matches against teams in this tier. They'll win one of them, and they'll be right back in here somewhere. But you know what? I have to move us down, and if I move us down further, it's just going to be silly when that happens. Regardless, so be it. I'd be happy to put other teams ahead of us, but here's the problem. No other teams actually, other than Utah and ISU Academy, who actually got the wins against us, none of these other teams have arguments. And I'm sorry, those two teams, you did it. You got the win against us. Fantastic. I think some of these teams that I've put ahead of you in this same tier would actually find the win against you guys, so I really can't just put you in the next spot. But let's cover it here. Miami game was close since we threw our entire ult economy in one fight on multiple occasions on Jib Prescott. Yeah, I hear you. Kings Row wasn't even competitive. Cool. Cool. You won. I've got you here, and I've got you in the right spot. Ivory. Again, I would be. There's a world where I could put you here. I could more likely put you here. I can't really put you above Fisher when Fisher has a win in this tier and you guys don't, and you guys have a track record of underperforming. You do. ASU and Rutgers are maybe sitting up here. ASU and Rutgers, even to a degree. UCI actually has something. Sitting up here without huge, amazing wins. Rutgers has the match against Northwood and has a long history of being this. ASU similarly has that history. Just letting you know why the game was close. Yeah, no, I totally get it. Okay. So then Northeastern. So I was moving on from Northeastern. Siena Heights. Siena Heights is sitting here. Siena Heights, for those who don't know, is a team that is currently, it has a lot of overlap with a team that is playing in Master Division now, called Tanuki in the Face It League. They've won a few We Are So Back Cups at least. They've also are now in Master Division. They got second place, I want to say, They got second place in the most recent season of Face It Experts, and they're solid. Now, it's not the exact same team. They don't have Lich, and they don't have Solo Zen. They do have Mancholo, who will occasionally see playtime for Tanuki, and then they have a different DPS. Is it Day? I'm blanking on who they have to run as well. I think on Siena Heights, they also have access to a ex-Pacific Contenders player that they don't run on Tanuki. He wasn't interested in playing with them, probably doesn't want to play the game that much, whatever. But looking at that, you'd look at this and go, oh, that sounds pretty good. Got into Master Division. Well, Irvine is a Master Division team, and they're up here, so seems like maybe this team should be a little bit higher. I'm not necessarily sure that that's true. Maybe they could be in this tier. Maybe. We'll need to see it. They haven't gotten any of those wins yet, and they did take a loss to Cleary. If they took a loss to Cleary and Cleary's all the way over here, why is Cleary not over here? Because Cleary, I knew was going to be a threat. I expected Cleary would probably headhunt a team in here and take a, snipe them, kill them, do something silly to them by catching them off guard. Clearly didn't get that far. The team that they caught off guard, I guess, was Siena Heights, and then they maybe sort of imploded and lost to an absolutely nothing team. And by a nothing team, I mean a team that doesn't even make it into the pit. I don't remember which team it was exactly. I can go check in ABC. It doesn't matter. They lost to a nothing team. It wasn't a forfeit. It's just their players are disagreeing on how seriously do they want to take the game. They have they have solid enough players to compete in the pit, to compete over here in the pit, etc. They beat Siena Heights. They could even, if the whole team was hungry, they could potentially find themselves in the lower end of core collegiate, like lower end of that top 20, top 18, top 16 maybe. But they clearly have disagreements over how seriously all the players on the team want to take the game or something of the sort. And so we'll see what happens. This is going to be a dangerous team, a bracket destroyer. They do have the talent in a couple of their positions to be a real problem to teams that aren't ready for them, or to tilt a team that expects to walk over them, and then whoops, they start taking maps and the team could have stabilized but then loses because they go, what, we're losing maps to these nobodies, etc., sort of thing. So this is a little bit of a dangerous bracket destroyer, etc. And the problem with ranking them is if they decide to be serious, they will quickly find their way over here, etc. Obviously, I can rank them lower because they lost to an absolutely nothing team, but that's not real either because literally two players on their team can just go, we don't feel like losing today, and they won't to many of the teams in this tier. Okay. Hey, Backstab Bud, how you doing? We got Mizzou on here. You had your good win over Blinn at DreamHack, which we went over earlier, but then Converse got you as their sort of reestablishing match. Wishing you could aim. Well, anyway. So then we move on from Siena Heights to Cumberland. Cumberland, a bit of a new player on the scene, new player to be talking about, potentially at the lower end of top 20 here, but they've earned it. They got the win over Georgia Tech, which firmly knocked Georgia Tech out of the top 20. They would be looking for another win to really prove it, but they did take a map off St. Clair, which again, back when St. Clair was up in a tier above, that certainly was a sign of vulnerability. I was actually hoping to catch St. Clair this last weekend, because we ended up playing terribly, but I was looking at St. Clair as a very vulnerable team, in part because of that, but in part just level of play that we are seeing, etc. But the only things that they have to their name at this point are, hey, they beat Georgia Tech, who fell out of the top 20 as a result. Georgia Tech hasn't had an amazing season so far. At DreamHack, they tripped up against SCAD. They got the win, but they went down first map against SCAD and then had to reverse sweep it. Not as hard to do in a 3-game series, but still, it hasn't been fantastic. That said, I believe Georgia Tech is currently 5-1 in ABC, so their record's okay, but that was a little bit of a rough start. I don't think they're going to be getting too many top 20 votes this time after the loss to Cumberland there. One fight away. I'm sorry, Mikey. I'm sorry. You know exactly how we feel about, we were one fight away for frickin' 4.5 minutes from not embarrassing ourselves on Friday against ISU Academy. Yeah. I guess we were technically one fight away against Utah and push there. That might have been 1.5. I'd have to go check again. Doesn't matter. We played terribly. Temporal will raise you if you super chat enough. Maybe. Bribes might work. Okay, so Cumberland, that's sort of where they are. They're new to being relevant in the scene, but win over Georgia Tech, threat on St. Clair earlier, pay, that's interesting. I don't know if this was actually, close, like they were in any danger of winning the series, but that they got a map off of St. Clair, worth paying attention to. Likewise, as Ivory was just telling us, Miami, Ohio got a map win off of Bellevue, and looks like they were close on another one. Sounds like some ult economy stuff that Bellevue needs to work out to make that not be close. I see that Bellevue is scrimming harder than they have in past seasons, more consistently than they have in past seasons. So I look forward to seeing them work that out. Then we move on to Utah. Utah is 6-0 right now. They did get an upset win, no other way to put that, over Northeastern. Fantastic on them. That's why they're up here. They, did that. That is fantastic for them, and I'm not going to be sour grapes over that. You might say, hey, I'm sour grapes over it because I'm not putting them above Northeastern. Uh, I mean, I can do it. I can put Northeastern behind these teams. It's just not real. It Sorry guys, it's just not. Um, we played really badly. I don't know what to tell you. Regardless, Utah and ISU Academy were both on it to take advantage. I don't have much else interesting to say about Utah because they're not playing in anything else to my knowledge except maybe Playfly. Maybe they're playing in Playfly, and Playfly doesn't have a ton of competitive teams in it from what I've seen. Playfly is the org. It used to be them and NACE were sort of working together, and then they split from NACE, and NACE is clearly the one team that won that. NACE is clearly the organization that won that divorce. The main organizations in Collegiate Overwatch, for those that aren't aware, are, of course, ABC, which is Blizzard, really run by Radiant, which is the same people who run Calling All Heroes. Then there is CECC, or the Commissioner's Cup, which sort of has turned itself into third-party nationals by taking as a feeder from all the other championships around. And then the two big third-party leagues would be NACE and NECC. NECC has its Tier 1 divisions over here, and NACE has its Super Conference here. So Utah don't have a ton of interesting matches other than their win over Northeastern, which fantastic. Part of being a good team is when opportunities are presented to you, not feeling like you're already defeated, going, hey, we're playing well enough that if you slip up, if you guys aren't playing your A or B game, you're going to lose, sort of thing. That's absolutely part of being a good team. They did it. Fantastic on them. I actually thought that they were the best team of the four-way. Where is the last team here? Oh, I don't have Grand Canyon on here anymore. Whatever. The four-way grouping that happened where you had a group last season that had four teams all go back and forth. I expected Utah to win out in that. I was surprised that they didn't and Grand Canyon did. Have I have some faith in Utah as a team, etc. More so than I think some of the other committee members' team, except all that sort of stuff. But they, in my opinion, flopped a little bit last season after getting a good win, and then whoopsie against that four-way mishmash in that group there, in what should have been a little bit of a free, cheap group to get through. Playfly is just cheap. That's why we're in it. That makes sense. Took a map off ISU in that group. Was a close series. Okay. I'm happy. I'm happy to hear it. Taking a map off ISU was good. It's a little hard for us ever to take, hey, I took a map off on the King team seriously, because the King teams frequently fool around. And ISU isn't as bad about it as some of the other teams are. I'm looking at you, Northwood. But though actually Winthrop does it too, now that I think about it, to a pretty serious degree. I think Maryville does it less. I know ISU does it less. And I'm not saying they were, like on a foolish comp playing off rolls, etc. I don't know. I didn't have a stream. I didn't watch it. I was in airports at the time as we were coming back from a conference, moving matches around, etc. during group stages. Watching certain other teams that were afraid of us force us to take a forfeit. you know, because of said airports and everything for our team. But hey, that is what that is. Anyway, I'm ready to see what Utah does. Utah will almost certainly get another good match. Speaking of which, shouldn't we have new matches published today? Wasn't this the last reschedule, or did someone reschedule to Tuesday? Yes, we did download Overwatch onto two Switches and a laptop to potentially have one of our substitutes who was still at campus play, who hadn't gone to the LAN with us because, we even number of seats for rooming, etc., etc. They were going to play with two of us on laptops and two of us on Switches at the airport, because a team that had no chance of beating us was very not interested in a reschedule. Anyway, but that's different teams. Anyway, round 7 just generated. Excellent. Then we'll pull that up and take a look while we're at it. Sure, we'll take a look at round 7. Have I finished out a tier here? Miami, Ohio. No, ISU Academy I'll talk about real quick. We're not to a tier break, but ISU Academy, they're interesting here. Some people might object to them being here given that Briarcliff is all the way down here, and Briarcliff beat them 3-2 in NECC to start the season. You see this nice 3-2 win that we're looking at for Briarcliff. I am placing ISU here because I expect ISU has now figured out who their appropriate DPS players are. I understand for the Briarcliff match didn't have a DPS player available because they'd sent him up to ISU's main team to fill in for someone else. And when they play that player, they are meaningfully better. They are meaningfully better. I think these two teams scrim each other as well as having played that match. It generally makes sense to schedule a scrim opponent after you've played, if you played close early in the season, to go, oh, well, you're a safe scrim for us because we aren't going to play you again here in the regular season, not till playoffs, whatever. I suspect ISU is just better if they've figured out what their proper DPS lineup is, because the DPS lineup that we went up against was a qualified DPS lineup the second time that we played them. We still should have beat them, but that was a qualified DPS lineup, and it just isn't. It just wasn't in their other formation. Yeah. Okay, so now we'll move over and look at the round 7 matches because they're here, they've been generated, and we have a collegiate hungry audience. Where would Fisher White rank? That's a fair question. Fisher White is going to be, I only put 2 Fishers up here, but Fisher White also lost to Maryland at the season opener, sort of the, I forget what they like to call them, but like the pre-matches that happened at the same time as OWCS Stage 4. NECC did their pre-season matches, and Maryland beat Fisher White. So they have to be below Maryland, and they have to be below Fisher Navy, unless you guys tell me internally, no, that's gone the other way. So my guess is honestly, pretty much anywhere below these guys would be fine. I suspect UTD is probably better. Cleary is a giant asterisk because they can swing so heavily left and right. Georgia Tech, I suppose, beat Fisher 3 last season. I'd probably put them somewhere around here. You guys have players, you have some potential to move up, but it's not like these teams that I'm putting behind you are bad either. I mean, Grandview has done stuff in the past. They have Zoe, they have Brady over there, etc. Minnesota was part of that 4-way trade. North Texas was part of that 4-way trade with Utah, Grand Canyon, etc. Mystery Machine is Pittsburgh, and that's a lot of old, or that's a handful of old. That's like a handful of old sleepover party players, etc. But they lost a match, so they're sort of far from the top 20 at this point, though maybe they were missing someone. Maybe that'll bring them, but maybe they'll actually be back up here somewhere, here, whatever, who knows. But if I had to guess, I'd probably put Fisher's third team somewhere around here right now. But I'm really hesitant to rank a third team. I don't even like ranking second teams. I do it because they force themselves into the scene, and Fisher's third team may force themselves into the scene as well. But we've heard a lot about like, oh, Fisher has 5 qualified teams before, and then it's like, no, you guys only actually play 4 of them. Or we see things like Fisher so-and-so. We had the situation, fortunately you guys cleaned this up, where this team was called Fisher Navy in NECC, but was called Fisher Freaks in ABC, and it's like what? But then there's slight stuff where like we could go over to Playfly, where Fisher's playing with a team with a roster that doesn't match any of the 3 Fisher teams that we know about it. Some merging of them. And we've seen enough stuff from that with Fisher in the past where they like merge their players between teams, and I know why they're doing it. They're doing it for leagues that you have to all be in the computer lab together requirements. I understand it, because you guys of course have some students who are, studying remotely, and those aren't allowed in those leagues. But like, it makes Fisher a bit of a pain beyond their top team, maybe top two teams to seriously track when it's like, well, what do we consider Fisher's loss in this Playfly League or win in this Playfly League? What team is that? I'm not a huge fan of that. But hey, cool. So we were looking at the new matches that got generated. Northeastern. Oh, that's Converse's second team. That's not real. I would have taken a Converse rematch, but that's Converse's second team. That's not real. So we can look at these. ISU versus Winthrop. So this is the championship match. We're getting a preview of the championship match. I expect that ISU will win this. Winthrop will still not be dialed in enough, but it's possible that taking this loss, especially after Shock just lost out, I'm pretty sure they're still going to DreamHack, but after Rock just lost out, and that has heavy Winthrop player overlap, this second loss to ISU that I'm predicting may be enough to then cause Winthrop to go into overdrive of F this, we're working hard, we're training as a team, we're doing this, we're going hard, and now we're going to flip it for the finals sort of thing. Bellevue and Converse, Bellevue won this before, so I would expect that we're probably looking at the Bellevue win there, but on the flip side, Converse, may have a secret comp, may have put stuff together. Who knows? Converse lost to Bellevue earlier in a close match, probably before Hurricane stuff. But now Converse seems to fully be on the other side of that, and could very well have it. I mean, they just beat Mizzou, so I'm putting this, but this is close. St. Clair should still be fine to beat Utah. Sorry, Utah. I St. Clair's moved down a tier, but that may make them hungry, that may make them angry and force them to go train, go be serious, etc. Or maybe they'll be wounded, like, how did this happen, what did we do, etc. And they'll be open and vulnerable, similar to how Northeastern was open and vulnerable. And if anyone can do that, it's Utah, as they proved there. Northeastern is not going to lose to Converse's second team. Sorry, guys. Fisher, though Converse's second team, do they belong on the list? They probably do now that I think about it. Since I'm doing double teams for ISU and double teams, they probably belong on the list somewhere. Who'd you guys get? Lost to UCSD. UCSD is a very inconsistent team in the past. They're not top 20 material anymore, but in the past, they used to be a team that would go high, go low. Like, they'd lose to teams like Ball State, but then they'd win against teams like St. Clair or against teams like Converse, and then lose to Illinois Wesley. And you're like, guys, this is too big a swing. You're going from beating like an 8 to 10 team to losing to a 25-26 team. What are you doing? So this team was a little too swingy. I would actually think of Cleary sort of as the modern reincarnation of them. And so I look at this and say, okay, that's that they lost to this. Could UCSD have been having a really good day? Yeah, they could, but I don't think they're that team anymore that can swing as high as they did in the past. I think the scene's gotten better, and their players are a little more focused on graduating, etc. at this point. But hey, we'll see. Could be. It could be that this was just a very high swing from UCSD, and that this team is actually quite good. I've got no issue with this team. I mean, I look at this, and obviously we've got Chance, who has been sort of the sub on Converse for ages, and a perfectly qualified sub. Vader, I recognize. Yeah, I don't really recognize the others, but that's okay. Cool. Looking in through here, Fisher White versus UCLA. That should go to Fisher White. UCLA has been a team in the past, but I do expect Fisher White to hold this down. I don't necessarily expect that to be free, but I expect Fisher White to hold that down. Siena Heights gets the win here. Maryville will handle Mizzou. I think Cumberland gets the win over Washington there. Washington did make playoffs last season, was not the worst team in playoffs. Grand Canyon was definitely the worst team in playoffs, but beyond not being the worst team in playoffs, they they got a map off St. Clair, I want to say. Arizona, I think 3-0'd them, but they got a map off St. Clair. University of Washington this season, their losses to ASU. Can't really hold that against them. That team's, expected to beat them pretty handily. Champlain, they dropped a map to. Harrisburg's club team, not old Harrisburg, that, was a bunch of ex-contenders players. They dropped a map to. I probably expect this. I do expect this to go the way of Cumberland. That's a little too much vulnerability that I'm seeing there. And if we similarly decide, hey, let's look at what Cumberland's run through has looked like, UW is showing a little bit of vulnerability, whereas on the flip side, Cumberland is in their loss punching up a little bit and going, hey, we took this off St. Clair. We handled these cleanly. This, is expected to be a bit of a match. This was their upset win. And then Texas Dallas better than people thought, so I'm not really holding that map drop against them. So I do expect Cumberland to win this one. Grandview wins against that. St. Thomas will crush the Titans. Let's continue through. Maybe we do 1.5 pages, something like that. Depends when we get bored here. Are there rules restricting console and controller? I don't think so anymore. They used to have those requirements, but that was like years ago. I think almost all of the tournaments don't care anymore. And I don't think the players really care anymore either now that as of like whenever it wasn't that long ago, they sort of actually took somewhat meaningful anti-Zim stuff. Zim plus auto aim pisses some players off. I always think players should have just said, you guys are still using a real mouse, real PC, you guys still have the better setup, just win. But hey. Texas A&M versus UCF Knights. UCF Knights has been okay in the past, but if this is A&M's main team, I would expect A&M to still win, and I think that's their main team. One of them would have to tell me. Navy, still a little bit interesting. Like in the old world, Fisher 2 wins over, an unknown team. Briarcliff got well on the previous power rankings, I know, but Briarcliff announced that they had Mari playing for them, and Mari is not playing for them this semester. And that meaningfully changes the quality of the team. They are still being coached by Aspen, old Shikigami coach. They still have good players there. They're integrating well. They're improving every week. Like still solid. Make no mistake. But that is, that team not having Mari is a meaningful downgrade. But Fisher Navy, on the other hand, is not the Fisher 2 that we're used to. Like they're not. They lost to the Terps. So what's it going to look like? Well, Navy should win, but I don't think we've got anything great here. And this looks pretty good. I mean, they beat Redbirds Academy, but that was the Redbirds Academy that had not figured out their DPS line. They were not running. I would be very surprised if they were running Vintage because that was the same weekend we played them and they weren't running Vintage. So it would have been like an hour's difference in time. They lost to UCI. You can't hold that against them at all. Ohio isn't a meaningful benchmark this season. They have a terrible record. Akron hasn't been good for like a year and a half now. So I would expect that we're looking at Fisher Navy on this, but we are very much in the pit. And the pit is messy, and who knows what's going to happen in the pit? Who's going to successfully fight their way out of the pit? What sort of messy trades are we going to have happen? Like this, four-way trade shenanigans, like this, the win, but then win, like this, win, but then, win, like this, win. It's a mess in here. Pittsburgh's, they've got some ex-low tier contenders players, but then they lose to North Texas. So, okay, cool. Works for me. It's going to be fun. Okay. That is our second team. Will the B team win? The B team for Navy? Yeah, I know. You're going to make it out of the mud. Happy to win it. This Navy is the second team for Fisher. I know. It's Fisher White that's the third team. Or were you referring to Converse? I know this is Converse's second team as well. TAMU. Oh, that's your second team for TAMU. Thank you. Thank you, Swef. I knew I recognized that name. Um, your second team beating UCF Knights. I don't know. I haven't ranked UCF Knights. UCF Knights has been sort of relevant in the past. Never top 20 good. Never even really top 32 good in my mind. But like, hey, top 64. Um, yeah, I mean, maybe they lost to FIU Panthers, and who the heck are FIU Panthers? Okay, okay. And then we go over to Texas A&M White, and what do you guys have going on? Lost to Miami, Ohio. That's a better loss. Okay. I'm going with Texas A&M White because they have the better loss. Now, teams this is like below the pit. We're not even in the pit anymore. We're what's below the pit? The prison? I don't know. We're in the prison at this point, and teams in the pit have inconsistencies and sometimes can like have like, oh, they just don't know how to solve that thing, so they'll lose to team X even though they'll beat team Y, and team Y beats team X because they just don't understand how to play against enough things. They have too many holes in their level of play, their style of play, whatever. You guys are like down in the prison, and that's even more true. So a loss to a completely unknown team might not be definitive of, oh well, they're terrible. Below the trunk, below the pit, the trunk of the Phase Two Pontiac Aztec. Yes, yes, you've got it, blah. Okay. Um, So that was that one. Then we move on to Georgia Tech versus Toronto. Toronto's been relevant in the past, but I would give this to Georgia. I don't think Toronto has done anything here. Yes, Georgia Tech lost to um, Cumberland, but I don't actually think that's terrible. And but their loss is only to Miami, Ohio. Could be interesting. This will be a very good proving match for is Toronto still real? I think they still have most of the players I'm used to seeing. Let me take a look here. Don't they have a player that has like the same name as a player on like Shikigami, and I don't see that name here. And if that player's gone, that's probably not good news for them. I mean, it could be. They could have, acquired more good players. It wasn't some like exceptional player that, oh my goodness, you're never going to find your incoming freshman, etc. couldn't possibly be better than. So I would go with Georgia Tech here. I also think Georgia Tech is probably angry and scrimming harder and doing that since the loss, but hey, who knows? We'll see. UCI should beat Illinois, though thank goodness we have Illinois playing someone that isn't UCI, and UCI could also benefit from a little bit of proving. If we look at UCI, they've got a 3-0 over Converse, a 3-0 over Briarcliff, and a 3-0 over Fisher White. The only thing relevant of those is the 3-0 over Converse. They got a 2-0 over Fisher 2. That still doesn't really make it, in my opinion. Converse is the only relevant thing for the quality of team that UCI is expected to be. Illinois Orange, this will be telling. How does that go? Interesting to see. SCAD versus Terps should be Terps, but SCAD may be working themselves back into the scene. They obviously they still have at least two of their ex-contenders players. I see Snape and Kabimas on that roster. And back when SCAD was unquestionably a top 8 team, this was probably 2.5, 3 years ago at this point. Kabimas, Snape, they had those players. Now, when they sort of disappeared from the scene, fell out of the top 8, they lost their DPS players, and then we had the Overwatch 2 swap, and I think one of their tanks had to go play DPS, and it just didn't work, sort of thing. But maybe they've put it back together. Maybe they've now got people on proper roles. The reason that it comes up is, they went to DreamHack Atlanta, and sure, they lost ultimately to Georgia Tech, but they did get a map off them there. So is this now a relevant team? Who are their matches been against? No one. They lost to Winthrop, which means absolutely nothing. Congratulations. They lost to the second best team in Collegiate. And then because of that, they got a bunch of nothing matches, and this is the first meaningful match that they'll have. So this will be interesting. This will tell us, is SCAD back in the scene in any meaningful way or not? Not in like a top 20 way, they're not, but in a, hey, meaningfully in the bubble sort of way. Okay. That was SCAD. That's fine. That was Cumberland. Okay. So then we move on to Rutgers and ASU. That'll be fun. That'll be fun. Those are two teams that we have right next to each other on the tier list. So love to see it. We'll get good information out of that. UTD versus Northwood is a free Northwood win. Blinn versus Rebel Gaming is a free Blinn win. Ball State 2 versus Oklahoma. Unknowable. That's Ball State's second team, which isn't that far behind their first team from what I can tell. I think this is like a 4.4 team, something like that. And then Oklahoma. Oklahoma's been, a top 32 team maybe in the past. Been a minute, but that could happen. Texas A&M's main team versus Pizza Pirates. It's a little more interesting. I do expect Pizza Pirates to win that, but that's a little bit interesting there. And then does anything jump out at us on the second page? I'm probably not going to do all of the matches here. North Texas needs to win that to prove that they're real. CSU Billy Gold isn't terrible or anything, but North Texas needs to win that to prove that they sort of belong in the pit, I'll say. Cincinnati versus Gamercocks. Cincinnati has been tough to handle in the past. What's Cincinnati actually running as their roster? Are their players still there? That looks like a changing of the guard of players. Lost to Oklahoma. Lost to Pittsburgh, but yeah, that's maybe not the end of the world. It looks like they may have had a changing of the guard of players. Oh no, Cincinnati. Maybe I'm thinking. Oh, I'm thinking the wrong team. Maybe that's not. Dividing will yell at me later that I don't recognize their players. That's fine. Anything here look interesting? Any teams that are here? I think at this point we're into matches that are less interesting. Banana Slugs. Are Banana Slugs relevant? Should I be paying attention to you guys again? I doubt it if I had to go this far to find you. You lost to Purdue. You lost to Bronco Black. Yeah, that's not going to work. Sorry, guys. I don't see anything on this page that matters beyond what I've already clicked into. Cool. Utah St. Clair. Yeah. Again, this would be the time, Utah, to go, hey, you took advantage of Northeastern when they were in a bad state. St. Clair may be in a bad state. They just lost a match that they, I'm sure, didn't believe they could lose to Blinn, who's down here somewhere. Take advantage of it. Get another one. Stack them. That's the way to do it. And then prove, no, you really do belong. Temporal and everyone else is underrating you. Prove it. Prove it. Cool. Co only lost to Utah 1-2. Still don't know how they beat Northeastern when we got killed by Northeastern. You did not play the same Northeastern. I'm telling you, you did not play the same Northeastern. The Northeastern that you played against probably could have gone 40-60 against UC Irvine. The Northeastern that Utah played against, Utah beat. And rightly so. Good on Utah for doing it. Good on Utah for doing it. We were not playing, not only were we not playing our best, we were not playing our average. We weren't even playing we were playing more than 20% worse than our average. But still, you have to take those when you're there. That is not me knocking Utah at all or knocking ISU Academy. If you want to be a good team, when other teams show up and, aren't playing their best or having an off day or whatever, you have to take advantage of that and win. And I say that as a coach for a team that has watched his team not do that before. For example, we've had a match against St. Clair maybe a year ago at this point where they showed up and were missing one or a player and, they have qualified subs, but it's no, guys, you have to win this. If you want to be real, you have to take advantage and win this. And at the time, At the time, I'd have said, yes, St. Clair was the better team than Northeastern, but when they give you openings, you have to take advantage and go win those matches and not come in and some like, oh, well, you're sort of not expecting to win in the first place. No, let me tell you, Rutgers doesn't go into their Northwood matches thinking, oh, well, you can't really win, etc. They go in hungry, and if Northwood F's up and tries to final cap them, they go for the throat and say, we're winning this match. Now, they didn't, but that's how you do this. Temporal's really upset they ruined his month. A little bit, a little bit. Moderate bit, moderate bit. Um. Anyway, okay. So we move on. Oh no, we covered over this. Let's jump back to the tier list. And if you guys have more questions, start getting them in because we're probably approaching the end here. I'll be going faster through the rest of this, but I'll catch up on chat. I'll do a loop now, and then I'll circle back. That was Miami. Ivory fold us in. Right, they threw their ult economy in one fight on multiple occasions. Something they need to clean up. Ajax talking about the Northwood match. Would have loved to see that upset. Was watching. They clearly cheated by upgrading their DPS. Where's phase 2? Did phase 2 upgrade their DPS? It's just neat that he can talk for hours about this totally unscripted. Thank you. Thank you. Tier names are boring. Overwatch with the rank icons. The problem is, like, all of these teams are full GM. Maybe you'll find some teams in the pit that are sneaking in a Masters player or two, but these teams are full GM. I know that's not what you mean, but okay. We need to spawn camp St. Clair. If we don't win, we deserve to. Okay. We need to spawn camp St. Clair. If we don't win, we don't deserve to get put up there. Hey, I want to see you guys spawn camp St. Clair. I would love to see that. I would love to see that. I can tell you that it was close. Great, great. So any use in the pit because that's where they are now, but if they played well this weekend, they get promoted to the circle of trades? I mean, it all depends, right? Like, I can't tell you what's going to happen this weekend. Who did we get? I mean, no. Beating Converse's second team will do nothing to in any way restore Northeastern, but if we beat Irvine on Friday, yes, that would certainly change things. We will not beat Irvine if we played how we did last weekend, but we're not going to play how we did last weekend. Irvine is favored in that match. I'm not putting a stick in the ground and saying yes, I expect us to beat Irvine. We should certainly go in hungry. We should certainly go in ready to take advantage of them. We should certainly go in and go, hey, you guys haven't really proven yourself yet. You guys might be running on reputation, and your players have sort of been all over the place, and you guys have lost before with your whole Rhino over Romani thing, and we've seen, things could have been better on that expert team that you guys expected to just farm an expert but didn't actually do nearly as well as expected. That had a couple Irvine players on it. Should go in hungry for sure, but we'll have that Friday and then whatever our round 8 matches. I mean, our round 8 match could be against a Mizzou or a Bryant Stratton or a St. Thomas, and a win or a win over those would, in my mind, restore Northeastern to this tier. Northeastern is the only team that I'm putting in this tier that has a win over a team in this tier. And Northeastern had to come down. Like I'm annoyed and would like to lower Northeastern more, but I legit can't. Like, and you could say, okay, well, these two teams have a win over Northeastern. Okay, but I'm pulling Northeastern down the tier. So, like, sort of thing. Okay, let's take a look here. I convinced him to lower us. I mean, I was probably going to anyways, and I would kind of like. I just off the top of my head went, we should probably be somewhere under 20 at this point. But when I actually go through the numbers, there aren't teams to put ahead of us. Um, you know, there aren't. Okay, go take that credit, Hedwig. UST is St. Thomas. This is St. Thomas. St. Thomas is here. I'll pull them up. This team right here, and they've got Noctis members only, Dan Twist, Pika, and that doesn't look like a player name, but whatever. Um, some of these players have played on an early version of Shikigami. Um, these players have sort of been around the collegiate scene forever. This team has sort of been around the collegiate scene forever. It's sort of sat in the collegiate scene waiting to play, but not actually have a tank and therefore refusing to sign up for tournaments for years. So these players are probably close to graduating, but they've been a little bit in and out. Last season they played, but they did find in the middle of the season they did well in their CEC qualifier. They didn't win their CEC qualifier, but there was a king in their CEC qualifier they were never going to. But they got meaningful wins in it over core teams. But then they didn't make it through their group. I suspect they thought their group was unwinnable and didn't realize there was actually vulnerability from other teams in the group, like a Boise or a Blinn who had lost a player, something like that. Members only is saying for them now. Okay, that's fine. Um, UST ain't the same. You all should know. Okay. You're saying it isn't the same because members only is tanking? I mean, I certainly recognize these four players from UST. Yeah, so maybe St. Thomas should be lower. Maybe St. Thomas should be lower. I would be perfectly okay doing that, but the problem is, no, I mean, what? Okay, but then I've got to put them below Northeastern, and I don't want to put anyone below Northeastern right now. I'm not happy with Northeastern. You see the problem? No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. I'm kidding. Um, I mean, I'm not happy with Northeastern, but I'm kidding about the I'm not willing to put them under sort of thing. What I mean by that is they. What I mean by that is if we look at their matches, they are only losses to Maryville. Like, okay, I'm not lowering a team that has a legacy of being good, even if it flopped at the very end of last season, because they have a loss to Maryville. Especially when we, have had a lot of teams sitting in these tiers without very proven wins yet. ASU, I don't think has any proven wins yet. Bryant Stratton beat someone. I think Bryant Stratton. Here, I'll check who Bryant Stratton beat. They beat someone in the tier below. Bryant Stratton beat Blinn. They beat Blinn. They beat Siena Heights. Yeah. Okay. So, things get interesting. UST is in. They're not propped up in this spot. They need to do something, but they don't have any losses. They have a history. They're going to sit here. Illinois Esports doesn't have any wins this season either. So, like, on the other hand, Illinois Esports actually made it to playoffs last season, and we think doesn't have a permanent silly role shift, but maybe we should be lowering you, St. Thomas. Texas A&M Maroon should be in there somewhere. I'm only ranking one Texas A&M school. I've got TAMU right here. I'm not doing multiple for like I won't. I'm not even giving Fisher their third team right now. And you want me to give a second team to a team that's low in the pit? Really? Really? No. You guys can have your main team, and that's it. Oh, Maroon is the top team. Then there you go. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Then they're already ranked, and we're good. Um, there we go. Okay, so I don't have anything else here unless Temporality wants to tell me more about St. Thomas. But I don't have anything else here. So if you guys have stuff that you want to get in here, things you want to point out, ideas you want to mention, or you just want to scream about my rankings are wrong, get that in now so I can address it. Otherwise, we're approaching the end. Oh, that isn't their logo, I don't think. I'm using old logos all over the place. North Texas's manager got me to change their logo, but like this is not Northwood's current logo. It's not. It's not. This is not ASU's current logo. It's better than ASU's current logo. This is also better than Northwood's old logo, the current logo, though I'm less partial on that. I'd actually be perfectly happy to use Northwood's new logo, less happy to use ASU's new logo. Um, sorry, sorry. But yeah. What's your end of tournament prediction? You should believe NEU climbs up at least a rank or two. Oh, NEU will climb up a rank. I have almost no doubt that NEU climbs up a rank. We will climb or implode. The level that we usually play at will not be in the isn't in the pit, and we decided to do this team with this formation to perform in the fall, because we do have a player graduating at the changeover, and that means that like the deal is no, we're going hard enough to do this. We know what we could do based on not the actual tournament results but the match results last semester, and we have four of the same players there. We did this to go, hey, we're going to do this. So we will either push up or we will completely implode because that's what they signed up for at this point. And that's likewise what I'm putting the time in for too. Like that's both what they signed up for, and that's what I'm putting the effort, time, life force, etc. into. And like if that's not what we're doing, uh, I'm scaling back, sort of thing. Uh, and I think they know that. Beat two top 20 teams. I mean, we will. I mean, we got what? Oh, like we'll just have to beat another top 20 team this weekend. We could beat two. We could beat UCI and then whoever our round eight opponent is. But that would mean beating UCI, which I'm. UCI is not a coin flip. UCI is tilted against us, and if we're playing average, it's meaningfully tilted against us. If we're playing our peaks, it's and by our peaks I mean what I mean by our peaks. It's doable, but yeah. But round eight, we'll see what we get. Oh, that was okay. Got it. My bad, Hedwig. Oh, was that a how to get ranked? Oh, in order to hit top 20, yeah, beat two real teams. Don't beat bubble teams that are towards the bottom of this. Like beating St. Thomas isn't going to be worth very much credit to anyone right now because St. Thomas has no proving wins. They've done a role rotation thing. Beating St. Thomas will make the rankers, including myself, pay a little bit of attention to you and watch you for another win, and it'll eliminate St. Thomas from the top 20. Or the core, they may still sit in like bottom of top 20, but like when I say top 20, what I'm really referring to is this sort of cutoff line of this is the real collegiate, like high level but not absolute kings. I'm really talking about this. Like this is the meaningful portion of collegiate. And I know that's not a ton of teams, and I don't mean to be like too snooty about that, but this is where the magic happens in collegiate, where it's like, wait, these teams are good enough to trade with each other. Yes, the better team does generally win, but are good enough to actually beat each other. Like this is a good high level tournament that's interesting. The very top is interesting within itself, but uh, the very top is only interesting within itself and is a very limited field. This is a more interesting field. And you could view this a completely different way. You could say, hey, the pit is where it's interesting because everyone can trade with everyone and it's this and that, and that's totally fine. But the pit doesn't make it deep enough into tournaments to actually see how stuff turns out, where core collegiate makes it deep enough into tournaments because the only ones messing with core collegiate are the champions up here. My view, anyways. So NEU will be above Red R. Red R. Rutgers. I mean, if we beat Irvine, no. If we beat Irvine, Rutgers would get fifth place. Irvine would come down, Northeastern would move up, and Rutgers would get fifth place. If that if that happens. Other things will happen potentially between now and then too. Like there will be a round of NACE matches, there will be other NECC matches, so other things may move. But no, if really any team beat Irvine right now, Rutgers would probably get fifth place. Can you just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 them to NEU? What do you mean? You lost me. Oh, can I put the numbers on them? Sure, I can do that. Yeah, I can do top 20 for you. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. It's a high place for Bellevue, but they've earned it. 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. Um, these three I could probably slide around pretty easily. At this moment, I have Miami here. I might have Utah here. I might have ISU Academy here. Um, yeah. But you said NEU was going to go up. I mean, I don't know who NEU's match is going to be against. And NEU won't go up if they lose. Like they're not going to lose to Converse, the second team. But like, of course, I'd have said that about ISU's second team too. But it's gonna. I don't know who NEU's round 8 match is going to be because the round 8 match won't be generated until the round 7 matches are played, and I don't know who we're going to get. I mean, if we get Siena Heights, that's not very interesting because we'll beat Siena Heights and sort of tap our toes and go, okay, give us our next opponent. Um, you know, beating Bellevue would be a different story. Beating St. Clair would be a different story. But that's how this stuff goes. And none of those are free. Like Bellevue is not free, St. Clair is not free, Mizzou is not free, even Siena Heights isn't free. Like have to perform and have to do well, be hungry, etc. Let's not put the cart before the horse. I do believe that Northeastern is going to get another win and find themselves in here again, but they've got to go get that other win. Oh, where do I think Northeastern will end? By the end of the season? Um, this loss destroys it a bit. So we have a little bit of a different format than usual here. It used to be for this season that you'd go top 32 and then one round and then top 16, or maybe it was only top 8 as double elimination. Regardless, this time it's 64 make playoffs and then top 8 only get back to double elimination. So your seeding really matters because to get from 64 to 8 means you need to not get fed to one of these two teams, right? And maybe you need to not get fed to one of these 4 teams if these 2 teams decide to turn it on again. And in order to do that, these teams need to not F up their seeding, but also you need to not F up your seeding. You need to not run into them early. So, I am wanting to build a team, and my team wants to build the team to go, hey, we think we can be top 8 based on a lot of things. We think we could be top 8. But, you won't actually get a top 8 finish if you don't perform correctly on the way there because your seeding based on the Swiss will cause you to go out in the round of 32 or something or the round of 16 because you ran into Winthrop in your round of 16 because you messed up your seeding. You see what I'm saying? So we'll have to see. We'll have to see. But uh, top 8's real. Like top 8 is absolutely real. Top 2 isn't real without monumental improvement. If these two decide to be serious, like and really care again, top 4 probably isn't either. But we'll see. Okay. These 4, and then I couldn't tell you. because Rutgers could have a great season again, and they could belong there. UCI has some potential variance to them. They're currently in the 5 spot, somewhat off of legacy, but it was a year ago that they flubbed up and their B team beat them and they missed playoffs, etc. So maybe they don't belong here. Bryant Stratton has a lot of really strong players, but then they have one obvious deficit in their lineup. So, how well is that covered, handled? What does the meta look like? Is that player hideable in the meta? Like, these are all questions that matter for are these teams going to be here? Buying UCI stock right now? Okay. Okay. I I'd believe it. I mean, I think they're going to probably play the game as a team more this season than they have in the past because they're in Master Division, and that gives them an excuse to play. On the other hand, UCI is no pushover school. UCI, much like Northeastern, has very real academics, and it makes it hard for those teams to scrim 7 times a week, for example, 9 times a week, like some of the competition do. That's just reality. But anyway, that I think is enough there. We've covered this. Let me do a final circle back on questions. Oh, we went over an hour and a half here. Fair enough. Fair enough. Oh, I have a thing from Kurt. Texas A&M. Oh, the logo. Thank you, Kurt. I appreciate that. I appreciate that. No one hopped in voice here. That's disappointing. I was in the committee voice, so committee members could have hopped in. Um, that's fine. What was I doing? Okay, so final catch up on chat here. Uh, See, Mr. Scarf, there's a voice. Yeah, I was in the voice channel in Discord for the Okra committee that does these rankings. 20 people do these rankings. I do my own rankings. I've been doing this longer than Okra's existed. But there is a committee that I am also on that does these rankings. And if one of them had wanted to hop in and share their thoughts, I've been here for it. But that's going to do it for now. I'm going to go ahead and call it. Thank you, Blah. I appreciate it. I'm going to go ahead and call it there. Drop a like, subscribe, for more power rankings, some Northeastern Overwatch streams, maybe every once in a while me talking about Overwatch theory and coaching and all that. But that'll do it. Temporal out.